Yo, welcome everyone once again to the We Are Gamers series. My name, the host for you today, Champ Tone, aka Sykosys, a person, a gamer with a passion for Jesus and gaming. And it is a true pleasure to grace your space once again this day. Today we will be having another great 1v1 session with another person, another gamer, a fellow mecha enthusiast, as most people should be. Allow me to introduce our guest today. We have the honor of going 1v1 against Switchy. Welcome, Switchy.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Hey man. So if you don't mind, if you could just give us your first name.
Sure. My name's Matt.
I don't think I actually knew your first name ever.
We don't go
Interesting.
by that.
Yeah,
We
I
don't go
know,
by first names.
right?
So I
Yeah.
only know some people by their first name because I know them, out of the gaming space. But when you're
Mm,
gamers, you kind of live on your gamer tag.
right. So, all right. So, we call you Switchy. Has that always been the gamer tag you use? Is that what you usually use when you're playing online, or do you have like other names or like a series of
Um,
names that you use?
well, Switchy's kind of been the one I've stuck with now for probably at least, I want to say probably at least the last maybe 8 9 years.
Mm,
I've had a couple of names prior to that.
mhm, mhm.
Probably my first name was it was actually Dark Saber, and then that
Dark
was a
Saber.
reference. Yeah, it was a reference to the old Star Wars. I'm a big Star Wars
Mm,
fan, and in the old books, there was a story where the Hutts, so
mhm,
like Jabba the
mhm,
Hutt, his whole family
mhm.
wanted to build their own Death Star, but they just wanted to make the weapon only, just the gun, the big
Right.
laser. So they called it the Dark Saber. It was kind of a funny trick, just
Mm,
kind of sound. I love the title, but
mhm.
the weapon itself didn't actually work. It blew itself up because it was constructed improperly. So it was kind of like a funny kind of
Mm,
almost reversal of fortune for that. So I had that. I've had dabbled in other names, but I just I liked the idea of like twitchy or like shifty kind of. I
mhm.
was kind of getting bored of that, so I saw the idea of switch and kind of a blend of the two, and then kind of stuck with me. And I've had that most of my time, at least since all the time you've known me, and even beyond that. So pretty much every game, that's basically the only thing I use now.
That's interesting. So does the name have a specific meaning for you? I mean, you said you were just like going through iterations, but I mean, you've stuck with
Mhm.
Switchy for as long as I've known you, which has been a few years now. So I mean, does
Yeah.
that what meaning does that name specifically have for you per se, or is just just let me know.
I think it was kind of I was looking when you hear Dark Saber,
Mm.
it sounds almost like like a kid's name. Yeah, because it's like, oh, the Dark Saber. It
Dark
just
Saber
it
is
felt like
kind of cool.
someone. Yeah, but it felt like someone who was like a I have a running joke with some friends where when you see names that are like, Dark Saber or, you know, Cloud Strike or something, they're all like a certain just,
Mm.
almost like a console name because that's
Hmm.
what they kind of pick on Xbox and PlayStation.
I get
So
what you
when I
mean.
started playing more PC,
Mm.
because I used to bounce between both for a long time.
Hmm.
It just I liked the way it sounded. I liked the way it stuck, and it felt a little bit kind of silly, but also, you know, just I don't know. I just kind of liked it. It felt also good for like when people would say it
Hmm.
versus like if
Hmm.
you started talking to me while playing, you go, "Hey, switch," versus imagine saying, "Yo, Dark Saber, go to mid lane or something." It just doesn't. I don't know. It just didn't have the same ring. So it just
Mm.
kind of stuck with me, and that was kind of where I went with it. So, and I've played with it ever since.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's true, right? Because usually if you have a name that's too many syllables, you just stick with like the first part of the name. You know what I mean? I know we have a few guys that we play with. We don't say their whole name. We just say like the first
Yep.
few syllables, and that's it. And
Yep.
Switchy, it's true because Switchy is like you're just like, hey, Switchy. It's so easy. It literally rolls off your tongue. It's
Yep.
such
Yep.
a cool name. and I swear everyone knows when we say Switchy, we know who we're talking about. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like it's not even like a
Yeah.
common
Nope.
game name. All right, that's cool. So
Yeah.
if you don't mind, this is usually a touchy question. I know some people with their age, they
Nah.
sometimes. So how old are you now, and when did you actually start gaming?
Ooh, well, I'm 33 now.
Mm,
So I'm
young
getting
guy.
well, I joke. I had a running joke that I would say to some friends when I turned 33. I got to after it passed around March, April. I said, "Well,
Mm.
look at that! I got to live longer than Jesus."
Oh my
So,
goodness. You actually said that.
yeah, so I made a joke about it, but no, I got to 33.
Mm,
I started gaming. I was raised Catholic, so I
mm,
was raised pretty heavy religious.
mm,
So it was always a background that was important to me. It's a little different now, but when I was
mm,
younger, that was I was church every Sunday,
mm,
all that. So I kind of make some of that is kind of just my background culture. I make
mm,
jokes like that. Most people don't know that. Like the
mm.
33 was his age when, and all that. So it kind of
That's
makes a
why I
silly
mean
reference.
I got it. And that's why I
Right
laughed.
away.
That's so funny.
You
Yeah.
would. So, now I started gaming. So it's going interesting for me. I started gaming. I mean, I've been gaming since I was a kid,
Mm,
but it's funny. I can't say I was an official gamer until I
mm,
was actually almost 11 or 12.
mm,
Um, so I used to tinker with, and play old computers, and
mm,
things like that. We didn't have a lot of money growing up where we could afford consoles and
mm,
afford video games. So it was someone would give up an old computer, and
mm.
my dad would come home with some. I'll never forget the first computer he came home with. Some guy had gotten Windows 95,
Wow.
and so he
Windows
gave up his Windows.
95.
He gave up his Windows 3.1
Oh my
to us,
goodness.
and we played. Like I don't even remember the name of the game, but it was one of those games where it's like almost like you have two tanks on either side, and you have to like aim and try to shoot the other tank,
Oh
and you
my
have to
goodness.
like blow away the debris.
And it would like ricochet off the wall. Like you could like
Yep.
bounce shots off the wall. I know the game you're talking
Yep.
about. Yes,
Yep.
yes, yes.
Between that and I used to go to my cousins and play Pitfall on
Mm.
their computer and stuff. So yeah, it was different. I wouldn't have considered myself probably someone who gamed until I was a little older,
Mm.
11 or 12,
Hmm.
because of that. So
Wow, that's interesting. I actually had a very similar experience growing up because we didn't really have so we received hand me downs too, but it was always a hand me down computer. It was
yep.
never a console. It was a hand me down computer, which was always crazy that people had these things and were just giving them away. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
Yep.
so what was it?
Yep.
Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Well,
If
I
you
was
got
just gonna simply say one of my favorite games to play of all time was Mech Warrior 3. I'm a big Mech Warrior guy,
mm,
and and Mech Warrior 2 and Mech Warrior 3, and I remember I played them on a hand-me-down computer with no graphics card from not even like an aunt or an uncle. It was
mhm,
like a family friend who ended
mm.
up their son ended up marrying my older cousin, like one of my older cousins who's probably like late
Oh wow.
40s,
Yeah.
so she's about 15 years older than me. She was like, I have this extra computer I don't know what to do with, and she gave it to my mom. And I'll
Extra
never forget, I was
computer.
playing Mech Warrior, which now it's like I think I was playing it on like 15 FPS, and I thought that was like
Yeah.
absurd.
And it
StarCraft 1
and the
against
graphics
the
were
computer.
it had like the line graphics, like
Sort of.
the
I
shells,
mean,
right? Because
yep,
I
sort of.
remember
Mech
Mech
Warrior
Warrior
3
2.
was good. Mech Warrior 3 was
Yeah,
good. Mech Warrior 2 was limited.
yeah, it
Mech
was,
Warrior
but
2 was
it
pretty
was
limited, but
it.
Mech Warrior 3 was pretty good.
Mech Warrior 2 had its charm. I was also a Mech Warrior fan. I just
Mhm.
I had the I would use the Gauss guns, but anyway, I'm getting ahead. So here, let's. So what was it about the video game? Because you said you weren't really playing video games until you were like 11. So what was it that actually drew you to play them? What was it for you that you were like, I enjoy playing video games?
what's funny is while I didn't have, when I say I wasn't a gamer till I was a little older, that was only because it was it was a little older before we started getting video games in the house.
Mm,
I would always go to cousins and friends and just play the heck out of their consoles and play the heck
mm,
out of their games. Um, I think what drew me to it is it's a combination, but I think the biggest thing is I love two things. And if
mm,
anyone who's ever played games with me knows, it's challenges
mm,
and competition.
mm. Yes.
And I'm super competitive with everything that I do. Now, I'm
Mm,
not competitive with people in real life, like outside of
mm,
sports. I'm not competing, but games to me, it's the competition element, it's the nature of it,
mm,
mastery to some extent, that just draws me in, and I've always felt it as a great way to kind of fill time
mm,
versus I don't really watch a lot of TV. I never really have.
mm,
Um, and it was always the puzzles, the stories, and then as I've gotten older, the competition of it that's drawn me into it more than anything else. And I think I've always kind of stuck with that. Plus, it's unique.
mm,
It's
mm,
different.
mm. Nice, nice. So, I'm also we've been asking, I've been at we, you hear me? I've been asking,
Mm.
questions about families' reactions because I know sometimes there's a stigma, and you coming from a religious background because I come from a religious background too. So, what was your family's reaction to your gaming? Was it positive? Were they ambivalent? Did they think you were like speaking to the devil?
um,
Like, cause
not the devil aspect. I would say though that the main reason I
mm,
mentioned money before, but the main reason we did not have a console or a
mm,
true gaming setup until I was like 11 or 12 was when I bought and used my Christmas money. I
mm,
merged with my younger brother because my younger brother was 2 years younger than me, and our birthdays were 2 weeks apart. So and I was born the day before Christmas. He was born like January, first week of January. So
mm,
we merged our money together from Christmas and birthdays
mm.
and bought a Nintendo 64 at Toys R Us. I'll never forget.
Oh,
And
such a good system.
we bought F-Zero,
Nice.
MLB 2000 and something else. But
Mm,
the main reason it took so long is because my dad didn't care so much, but my
mhm,
mom knew me
mhm.
and knew
Oh,
how addicted I would get to video games and
oh,
how
that's
I
interesting.
am. So she refused for years. I would ask, can I get a
Mm,
Sega? Can I get a Nintendo?
mhm, mhm,
PlayStation refused because she knew, like, I would go to family parties
mhm.
and they would like, oh, we'll sit down and play the Super Nintendo, and then I would just never socialize. I'd be honed in on the Super Nintendo, and then it'd be like, all right, it's time to leave, and it's like, well, give me 10 more minutes. I'm
You
trying to
didn't
beat
want.
this level.
Wow.
So she knew I was going to be a
Mm.
problem, and as soon as she
No
caved,
problem.
she realized her woe, which
Oh
was
my goodness.
that.
So,
But
when
yeah.
you guys literally got the 64. I mean, what
Mhm.
was she like? Oh my God, what are you guys doing? Or was it just like, all right,
we we had to put it on the living room television so she
Mhm,
could regulate the hours.
mm.
Um, we had to trade back in F-Zero because there was a blocky female character that
Oh
showed a
my
little too
goodness.
much in her outfit,
Oh no.
and my mom made me return. We had to return F-Zero
Really? Wow.
to for that.
Mm,
So it was the initial was kind of very very regulated when I was a
mhm,
kid very early on. It
mm,
wasn't until we eventually made like an upgrade and then we were able to move. We actually had a moment in our house where our basement was like half usable,
mhm,
and I had my 13th birthday.
mm.
I just turned 13, and my mom was like, we'll have a little get together for you and your friends from school. And I'll never forget, we took one of the rooms in the basement, which was like the only room that had like walls in it.
Nice.
One of the two rooms that had walls, and we had some holes and stuff. We put cardboard over it, patched up the
Mm.
holes, and turned it and painted it and turned it into a makeshift like den. And then
Nice.
that's when we were able to move the video games out of the living room and
Oh, that's
downstairs into that, and then we were able to kind of start to operate and play games. We were
right,
out of
right,
the
right.
house and kind of operate in our own space. So yeah, it was interesting. Growing
That's
up
pretty cool.
initially,
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
always what's funny is I've always, because of that background though, I've always steered away a lot of times from games that have, um, in like there are certain games like Mass
Mm-hmm.
Effect that I've played that was
Mm-hmm.
one of my favorites that has a lot of ethical choices and even some adult themes, in terms of
Mm.
activities that happen in the game. And what's funny is I've steered
Yes,
a
it
lot
does.
away from those games.
Oh,
I don't
really?
play a
Oh,
lot of those
that's
games.
interesting.
Yeah, I don't. It's just because it doesn't part of
No,
me.
no,
It's like, yeah, that's not
yeah,
part of me. So and that's just from my background and growing up.
that's interesting. So, if you don't mind, just letting us know, you already talked about your Catholic background and stuff like that. So,
Mhm.
what's your actual heritage and
Sure.
your cultural background?
So I'm an Italian Irish from Long Island, New York.
Hey,
How you
hey.
doing? How you doing? So I was raised, I mean, mostly Italian.
Mm,
So most of my heritage or culture was Italian driven.
mm,
My mom was all Italian. My dad was half Italian, half Irish.
mm,
Um, and I grew up really close to my family, like
mm-hmm,
all of my family, mom's side of the family and dad's side of the family, outside of my dad's parents,
mm-hmm,
all lived within 10 minutes of us.
mm.
Um,
That sounds about
Basically,
right.
yep, that was the way it was. So growing up, I was closer more to my cousins and my
Mm,
family than I
mm-hmm,
was to friends. So that was
mm,
kind of the cultural, and having Italian dinners
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm,
family and things of that nature. Plus, obviously, we all went to church, same church, so
mm-hmm,
every Sunday we saw each other at church,
mm,
and so that was how I kind of grew up. But Long Island, New Yorker is a very, very, very particular type of person. I think very unique to
mm-hmm.
the rest of the world for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So has that background have was it has there been any positive or I guess negative impact that that particular cultural background has had on your personal gaming experience?
Um, I don't know. I don't know if I could really say it has had. I mean, obviously, I mentioned before. Some of the
Mm-hmm.
religious elements were impacted some of the things that I play or some of the
Mm-hmm.
games that
Mm-hmm.
I've interacted. I definitely think that having that religious background
Mm-hmm.
tends to steer me in a way. It tends to make me understand, I think, a lot more, or more hyper aware of games that give you a lot of social choice.
Mm-hmm.
Games like
Oh,
Fallout or Skyrim where you could just go in and just murder everyone or do things. I almost find myself at times driven to not be the evil person, even when I want to do it. We'll try an evil playthrough.
right.
There is some semblance of that, but I don't know if
Mm,
if my culture has had a lot of influence there. But I think that maybe because again, I'm for lack of a better word, I'm a white Italian.
mm,
There's not a lot of challenges, I guess you'd say, at this point, or when I
mm,
was growing up,
mm,
that I was games were not an escape from anything for me. It was just something that I was drawn to because I was entertained. I didn't have the kind of escapist element to it. I know that that tends to be with some
mm,
cultures. I didn't have that. It was
mm.
almost just something that another thing for me to be able to do.
Yeah, yeah, no, I that's interesting. That's actually very interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the whole reasons why I'm doing this because it's so good to hear the different the different impacts and
Hmm.
even like how you saying like it wasn't as impactful that one part. But one thing I actually thought was interesting because I kind of have the same dilemma is the moral choice because it's so weird because I'm like, is something wrong with me? Because like I always steer towards the good choice as well. Because I kind of feel bad. I feel bad, like
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I remember
you
in
get
Fallout,
attached.
in Fallout 1 and 2, you can actually like not you can take out like kids and stuff. and I could,
Yeah, you couldn't
yo, I
you
couldn't
couldn't
do
do
it.
that in Skyrim or the other
Right, right,
Fallout's because
right. They,
I think our US I think the culture we live in was like probably shouldn't give them the option to murder children. It's kind of a bad look.
yeah, and I was
But
like,
yeah, I
wow,
mean
you can actually.
Skyrim,
I
all that.
remember feeling so bad. It was crazy. So let's
Yeah,
go
of
to this next question. Why? So you still play games, right? What?
course.
So
Yeah.
why do you still play them even now? Because you have a full time job.
Hmm.
You have your life. Why choose to play video games?
Well, again, first off, I love them. I love
Mm,
playing video games. I love being immersed in stories. I
mm,
think
mm,
for me, games, video games provide a really good avenue
mm,
for being able to still maintain social
mm,
interactions with people that I find worth it. Like
mm, mm,
I don't play any games anymore. Like even though I'll play the occasional story-based game or solo content game, like a Cyberpunk or a Horizon Zero Dawn, which are unbelievable games.
yeah, great
Um,
games.
the games that I really tend to play now are
Mm,
games that require um, a social interaction to them.
mm,
So, for example, League of Legends, but I don't
mm,
even play as much solo queue, as you call it, with
mm,
League of
mm,
Legends as much as I play with, you know, my friends, a lot of the
mm,
people that you and I have mutual connections with. And then my main game is Destiny.
mm,
That I play huge hours a
mm,
week, and but again, I play that with a group of avid Destiny players
mm,
who are all in the same age bracket, anywhere
mm,
between. There's a couple of younger players in our group,
mm.
but the majority of every player is anywhere between 30 and 40, 30 and 45. So it's all older guys.
Yeah.
Some have families and kids. So it's like there's a little bit of a bonding experience that comes along with that. And I
Mm,
think between that and I do have a hobby with computer building,
mm,
so being able to kind of see quote unquote the fruits of your labor
mm,
um, is good. Is a little good, a little bit good there. Plus, obviously, just you know, again, it's just something that's always been
mm.
um, there. People have always joked that I've never been diagnosed, but they always make a joke that I might should maybe go to a doctor and see if I have an ADHD or something similar to that. And I
Oh
don't
my
believe I
goodness.
do,
Really?
but the idea is that no, but I think people joke because I'm all over the place.
Mm.
And video games do form a semblance of calmingness for me. They allow me to kind of focus in on something when I sit
Oh,
down
all
and
right.
kind of disappear to everything else. Plus, I don't really like watching TV, so
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
another way of things that I prefer.
yeah. I like, yeah, I like how you talk about the social aspect. Like, it's good to play that solo game, but it's always more fun. It's always been like that though, right? Whenever you're playing a game with somebody else, it's just, I mean, before you called it before when you would go to your cousin's house and you would play games with them, right? Wasn't it just, it was just so good.
Yeah, we used to have. I'll never forget one of the greatest runs of gaming for me as a kid was I was probably 15, 16. I
Mm,
remember my mom and my aunt were joined some sort of group and they were meeting twice a week or whatever
mm-hmm.
over the summer. And I would go over to my cousin who was a couple years older than me.
Yeah.
But he was always a guy that I considered because I didn't have any older siblings. I was the oldest. And he kind
Mm,
of treated almost like like kind of a big brother to me. And I used to go there with him and my younger brother, and we would play like in the mornings. We'd make breakfast and then we'd
mm,
play
mm.
Cruising the World on N64.
Nice.
And then we started playing. He had a PlayStation 2,
Mm,
and we used to play Tekken Tag Tournament.
nice.
And then from that, I'll never forget, I didn't even have a PlayStation.
Mm,
But me and my other cousins, because my mom was the youngest of four, and they all had boys. Some of them, my aunts and uncles, all had boys too.
yeah.
We all went and bought at GameStop on
Mm,
the cheap PlayStation 1s and
wow.
bought Tekken 3. This is already now like 6, 7 years out from when the game came out.
What?
Just to when we would go to each other's houses, we would have Tekken tournaments,
Wow.
1v1s. So that it literally stemmed from my cousin having a PlayStation 2 and Tekken Tag Tournament. He got it, and we were like, "Oh, this is awesome!" So we all now, like, we always talk about um, Tekken
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and like getting together
Yeah.
and like, who is your? We all still have mains. Like, I could still rip out a Tekken on a PlayStation right now and
Mm-hmm.
play it and
That's
remember all the combos because that's what we did. So that was kind of, you mentioned the social.
that's
That's to
hilarious.
me what I saw out of that.
Wow. So
Yep.
what's your favorite game of all time? That if you could, and I mean, and
Yeah.
just the number one, like it gives you
Hmm.
all the good feels, you get the
Yep.
goosebumps, you could just play it and like
Hmm.
you know what I'm talking about. It's just your
Sure.
number
Sure.
one favorite game of all time.
I've had a struggle on this one for a long time because I was such an absolute obsessed when it came to Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. But
Oh,
then,
really?
but I had a three-way tie for a
Mm,
long time.
mm-hmm,
So it was Ocarina of Time, but
mm-hmm.
then I was one of the few who actually preferred Twilight Princess, which was the
Oh,
GameCube one, over
yeah.
that. But the third game, which ultimately is what I would classify as my favorite game,
Mm-hmm,
and I think to this day it still is, and I don't
mm-hmm,
think that will ever change,
mm-hmm.
is BioShock. BioShock
BioShock, the
1
original.
is the original BioShock is my favorite game of all time, in my
Really?
opinion. Yeah,
Mm,
it is a to me, it's the perfect game.
yeah.
Um, yep, I think you've you
I've
have a
played it.
game
It
that's
is it is
got
a good game.
it, but you've got a game that has an unbelievable story twist.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, with spoiler alert, you find out that your character is obviously not who you think you are.
Right. Yeah.
Um, you know, the gameplay is phenomenal. Is it a
Mm-hmm,
little clunky at times for a shooter? Sure, but remember, it's unique. You've got all of the aspects of it that go
mm,
into it. The setting. I
mm-hmm.
mean,
Yeah.
there is to my in
Definitely.
my eyes, there is no better environment to be in
Yeah.
than an underwater city that gives off kind of horror vibes without
Mm-hmm,
being horror, you
mm-hmm.
know, and the setting, the environment. I think it's politically, it's got an unbelievable underlying political message if you really look into it. The idea of how
Oh,
the world
absolutely.
destroys
Yeah.
is destroying itself. So this is a way for people to get away from this toxic, corrupt world that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
And what do we find out? That humans are humans and they're
Right.
going to be corrupt and toxic anywhere they go.
Pretty much.
Um, and
Yeah.
then, exactly. And
Yeah.
then your decision making, dealing
Mm-hmm.
with the characters and do I harvest
Mm. Right,
these
because
little children
that was one
to
of right. That's another
right.
one of those games that gives you that moral choice. It's like,
Yep. Yep.
but and it's weird because they don't the children aren't exactly like they look like ghosts almost. So it's
Hmm.
like, am I doing the right thing? Am I not? It makes it
Right.
so ambiguous, but it's like, can I don't know if I can really do
Yep.
this.
It is to me the best game because it
Mm,
it makes you where there are games that make you make decisions.
mm-hmm,
Fallout,
mm-hmm,
Skyrim,
mm-hmm.
you know, so many different games where you feel like you're involved in this decision making and one
Yeah,
choice that you make really flip flops the whole game. Telltale
yeah.
series, all those, you know,
Mm,
Walking Deads and all that kind of stuff.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
For me though, it it just touches
Mm,
because it doesn't, you could do a Skyrim and talk to some person, the fight goes sideways and that person ends up trying to kill you and you have to defeat them and kill them.
right,
But
right.
like you can then side quest for like an hour and a half and forget that happened.
Mm,
BioShock, because it's a more linear based game, keeps you in that pocket.
mm-hmm. Yes,
And you're always seeing the fruits of your decisions throughout fruits or famine of your
right,
decisions
right,
from
right.
start to finish. And then just encapsulate that in this kind of almost backwards mentality of, I mean, that opening thing, you crash land, you walk
Yep.
into the lighthouse, and
Yep.
it says,
Yep.
no gods, only men,
I know when you,
and
and that's how it starts. Yeah.
I think it's interesting because as two guys, you and I both who have religious backgrounds,
Mm.
in varying capacities, to see a game that's the idea is it's going to take out religion. We're going
Right.
to ban. We're going to, the church is corrupt.
Right.
The governments are corrupt, and we're going to go just to men, and then power. What is it? Power corrupts, and power
Power.
corrupts absolutely.
Yep. Yep.
That's the old adage. I mean, they find this
Every
slug
time.
and makes them powerful, and
It's like,
then it
oh,
gets corrupt,
right. Right.
because they discover a new power, and
Mm-hmm.
it really touches things that I think are even relevant today. And that game is what, 15 years old,
Yeah.
14
The
years old at this
political
point.
implications. Oh my god. But here, oh man, we could talk about that game for so long. Absolutely.
I
So
know,
let
I
me
know.
let's go to this next question though. It might be in the same vein. I don't know. So
Mhm.
do you have a gaming memory? It could be positive,
Hmm.
it could be negative.
Mhm.
That it's that one gaming moment that you will absolutely never ever forget.
Hmm. Hmm. Let's see. Yeah. There's a ton, but I'm sure. uh, I think even though Bioshock
Mm,
was there's so many great moments. I'd argue that the moment when you find out the big story twist, when you
mm,
find out that Ryan, Andrew Ryan, was you're like a clone of his, and the twist, and they've been pulling your leg the whole time. Would you kindly? Would you kindly?
mhm,
That was such a moment in a gaming experience. I mean, or I can go to, like I said, the Tekken Tag tournaments that we had as kids,
mhm,
and the Golden Eye and the Perfect Dark. I think my favorite gaming memory,
mhm,
though, is being a 12-year-old kid
mm,
and marching up the final steps of Ganon's castle in Ocarina of Time to go
mm,
up to the final boss fight. It's got the
mhm,
ominous music and running
mhm,
up the staircase, the long staircase. I think that was such a telling moment for me
mhm.
because that game really kind of drove my competitive, I'm going to be a completionist and compete and get this. That drove my gaming to that next level, that I wanted to keep playing this constantly.
Really?
And I think that's that. I think the only other thing that rivals that, um, I think that's my gaming memory.
Mm,
But the only thing that I think rivals it is when me and four of my friends,
mhm.
when I was 17, competed in an open tournament for Counter Strike Source and won a amateur land tournament and got bumped up to like the first tier back in the day of CAL, which was like an
Yeah.
offshoot of CPL, the Cyber Athlete Professional League.
Wow,
We
that's
were
when they
like,
first started the pro gaming
yep,
sort of. Yeah,
sort
wow.
of, yeah. And then there was the Cyber Athlete Amateur League where anyone could
Mhm.
join. And I
Mm.
remember because that where everyone played WoW. I don't know if you were a WoW player.
Yes, yes, I
Um,
was.
I never played WoW. Never
Mm.
touched it in my life. Thank God I did, because now I talk to people who play WoW and they're like, "Yeah, I've been off WoW for 10 years." To make it sound like it was like heroin or something, but um, no, we played Counter Strike, and that was my real forte. Even though I played StarCraft and stuff
Mhm, mhm,
occasionally, that was my real forte into online PC gaming. And
mm,
then from Counter Strike, I went into you know
mhm.
um, League of Legends and things like that, and kind of never really went back.
Oh, you were a
Have gone
CS
mostly to
player.
PC. I
That's
was a Counter Strike player. Yeah, yeah,
that's
that's where I
interesting.
started.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. Wow, this has been so good. We have one more question. We're just winding down. And this listen, I just want to say this was amazing. Getting to know you was real great, Switch, man. So this next question
Of
is
course.
actually a technical one. And
Hmm.
so basically, how do you feel the evolution of technology? And I know we've had these discussions personally. I
Hmm.
know you keep up to date with everything that's going on. How do you feel
Hmm.
the evolution of technology has actually impacted your own personal gaming experience, and has it been a positive? Has it been negative? I mean, yeah, take it away.
I think definitely for me, it's definitely been positives,
Mm.
besides my pocketbook or my wallet. But I think definitely the changes in technology. I remember when I first started playing PC gaming, I had
Mm.
a laptop that
Mm-hmm.
had no dedicated graphics card, and I remember being absolutely blown away because I remember for Christmas, my brother
Mm-hmm.
gave me the Logitech MX518, which to this day is still like historically the greatest gaming mouse that's ever been made.
Mm.
And from there, I mean, understanding, keyboards and
Mm.
gaming mice and microphones and all that kind of stuff and building computers and understanding, they've all impacted because they've given me a space to
Mm.
be able to experience things that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I don't know if I would like, we've all been, oh, I was a console gamer. For me, PC gaming has really been the experience that's changed the way I approach the things that I do and the social interactions because again, you have
Yeah,
access
yeah.
to that kind of stuff, you know,
Right, right.
Discord, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, going back, I remember TeamSpeak and Ventrilo.
Ventrilo.
Then you were doing Skype for a long
Skype.
time. Like we'll just do Skype calls,
Skype,
and
now
then
Teams.
now Teams, and then Discord has made it so the evolution of all this different software. I
Mm.
mean, and changes. I mean, I think have made my experience
Mm.
way easier because even
Mm.
something as simple as Discord allows you and I to just drop in. Hey man,
Yeah.
I see you're playing a game. Let's go.
Right.
Versus having to coordinate. So I definitely think from that perspective, it's definitely been a positive. I mean, I can't really say too much negatively, like I said,
Mm.
besides the wallet.
Mm.
I think the only thing I would say negatively
Mm-hmm.
is that I think that it does the technology that I've moved into
Mm-hmm.
does make me a snob at times, and I don't mean it like I mean it kind of but when I made the switch to PC and really hit the
Mm.
kind of ramp up in technology,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of left behind a lot of people that I used to play games with.
Mm.
One of my closest friends, still one of my closest friends to this day, him and I used to play Destiny 1
Mm.
nonstop, like
Mm-hmm.
nightly on
Mm-hmm.
Xbox. And then when I
Mm.
made the switch to PC and he didn't because he couldn't, he
Mm.
was like, I'm not going to not spending money. You
Yeah.
lost him in that space because it wasn't crossplay until now. Now he's been out of that game, out of the game
Yeah.
space. But
I know. I that that I personally understand that. I have so many buddies that are on console that, yeah, that we're literally playing the exact same games. But
yep.
like you said, the good thing is crossplay is starting to cut. People are these game companies are starting to understand. Hey, crossplay is not exactly so detrimental. So hopefully,
No. Well,
they'll keep
except in
going in that
Destiny when
direction.
you're playing PvP and you've got Xbox, PlayStation, Stadia, and now
Mm.
Epic Game Store with Steam all trying to have a crazy connection and guys
Ugh.
like teleporting around the map. It was
Yeah, I
fun
was
when I
gonna.
tried to play a match before.
Oh,
So, but
yikes.
it's good. I think technology ultimately the evolution has really made
Mm.
it a positive. I mean, and I've
Hmm.
I've gained so many new experiences. I have an Oculus Rift, and just to be able to
Nice.
do VR, I mean, even though
Yeah,
it's not
that's nice,
gaming,
right?
the Google Earth, man. I made a friend.
Hmm.
You get a good laugh as we finishing up here. I made a friend cry,
Oh no.
and you're like, "What?" She had been to Europe years before,
Mm.
and it was one of the most impactful trips for her. It had come at a rough time, and she was able to
Mm.
get away
Hmm.
and create a new experience. She came over one time, and I had the Oculus Sip. She's like, "What's that?" I was like, "Oh, that's the VR." She's like, "Oh, that looks pretty cool." I said, "You should try it out." So she's like, "I don't know." I said, "Well, there's this really cool thing you can do Google Earth, and you can
Mm.
travel the world, and like
Yeah.
it does the 3D imaging." She parked herself right in front of the Eiffel Tower,
Oh my
and
goodness.
it's a 3D. And what it does is you can get really close, and then it will use pictures that people have uploaded to Google Earth
Yep.
and put you down on the street
Hmm.
looking up at the Eiffel Tower. And I walked away for a second. I came back, and the girl was crying
She's
because all of the
really.
emotion and the memories that she had experienced on that trip and everything came rushing back. She had done like a tour of Europe and she
Yeah,
started
because
bouncing to all the different places, and to
I
be able to do that.
yeah, the VR is such an experience, and it's funny you say that because I've actually done the Google Earth on VR on an Oculus Rift, and I was
Yep.
like hovering over buildings, and I
Yep.
started feeling almost like sick because I was afraid I was gonna like hit the. It was such a wild experience. I'm like,
Yep.
wow, is my brain really thinking about this? Oh man, but yeah,
It's
it's so
great. It's
crazy, man.
great.
Yeah.
And I mean, it'll only be soon. I can't wait. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
eventually, for example, you'll do a podcast and your favorite podcaster or you or whatever will put a 3D camera in a
Mm,
chair at the table in the podcast, and you'll be able to Oculus in and watch the podcast from like you're in the room. Like these are
mm,
just little things that like technology really has changed me and made me appreciate a whole new
yeah.
level of gaming. So
Yeah, indeed. Oh man, awesome. This was awesome, bro. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Switchy. Thank you so much for coming on and just being a part of this. I mean,
of course.
we are gamers, everyone. We are gamers, and we are people just like you. So I want to once again, I want to thank you for listening, letting us grace your space, letting us grace your earbuds, your earpods, wherever you're listening from. Now, I just wish you a great day, great week. Continue just getting that ganadora. Remember, Jesus loves you. God bless and peace.